All right, if you're just joining us, let me say welcome. We are watching the clock. We'll be starting here in about 30, 45 seconds. For those of you who are brand new to XINNIX, welcome. For those of you who are what we call the word Xennites out in the market, you know of us, or you're a Fox, a fan of XINNIX. Let me just say welcome back, and what a privilege it is to have a few minutes with you today. You guys are in for a real treat. Now, you might notice on your screen, there's an area for questions. You can also make comments if you like. So why don't we do that as just to get you warmed up as we're waiting for about 30 more seconds, but get you warmed up. Why don't you tell me if this is your first time or you have been a Fox for quite some time. Again, that means a fan of XINNIX or a friend of XINNIX, if you will. So everybody, why don't you type in. Hello, Jenny. Welcome. I have a first timer. David, hello. Hello, Christy. Yes, you're a Fox. And so is Jeremy. All right, there's Waylon. He's a Fox for sure. There's another Christy. So I've got a new Christy that's joining us. Big Fox from Indy. I love that. Dave, it's good to see you, my dear. All right, yes, I'm going to be on camera. Somebody's asking. Yes, I will be on camera in just a minute. You'll get to see me in just a moment, along with Ron Wallace. You guys are in for a treat. When I say always look for a mentor, look for someone who has enormous wisdom, I have brought to you a gentleman that happens to be a friend. I am now calling him a friend. Hopefully he'll call me that as well, as I've gotten to know him and have actually gotten the privilege of going to his home and asking him countless questions. He will be on camera as well in just a minute. We got a lot of Foxes on here. For those of you who are new, going, what's a Fox? That is a friend or a fan of XINNIX, F-O-X. All right, let's get started, everybody. It looks like you are warmed up. For those of you just joining, I'm asking for everybody to put inside the chat room. Are you a fan of XINNIX, a Fox? That means you've been to XINNIX, attended, been to our webinars, seen us speak, or you've been through some of our programs. And some of you have never been here before. So with that, let's get started. And I'm going to jump on camera first. Hello, everybody. What a privilege it is to have a few minutes with all of you. And yes, I am broadcasting from home. I went to the office, just a little data point. You guys will appreciate this. They were going to run a fire drill at the exact same time we were going to be hosting this. And for some reason, I'll call it God, we found out, and so I've run home to make sure that we could still conduct this without being interrupted. I know you guys can appreciate that. That wouldn't have been gone over very well, right, if we'd had a fire drill in the middle of this. So with that, let me give a proper introduction to the gentleman that I have invited to be with us today. And I cannot tell you, I get the privilege of interviewing a lot of people. But this man that you're about to meet, to me, is an icon. He's a trailblazer. He's someone who has literally paved the way. Now, many of you don't know me, so let me do just a quick introduction, if you don't mind. I am the CEO and founder of XINNIX. Blessed to have this company for over 20 years. I do have the privilege of going out and speaking, and I'm considered a thought leader. My book's about to come out, so I'm putting the word author now, so be ready. You guys will love the book. I hope you love it. I certainly am going to ask for you to tell me what you think, but it's about how to achieve success long term, how to absolutely achieve each and every goal. And so I think the most important part on there, besides the 29 Culture Awards, which I'm really proud of my leadership team and the culture that we've created, where people love to work here. I think the most important part's the last line, everybody, right? You guys can read that. And that's, I'm a mom. I have two beautiful little girls. I'm a wife. I have two dogs that are in the garage, so we don't get interrupted. I'm a huge athlete. And if you say, what am I going to do when I'm all said and done, which I'll never be done, I'll be fly fishing, by the way. So somebody asked me, where does Blade come from? Let me make it really easy. I cut to the chase. I get to the point, or I'll cut you, is often a joke, but well, maybe. Anyway, so that's Blade. We all have call signs at our company where we have a lot of fun behind the scenes, because we believe when you have fun, you're learning, you're growing, and you're doing life together, so you might as well have fun along the way. All right, so here's our guest, the one and only Ron Wallace. He'll be popping on camera in just a moment. Man, Ron Wallace, how do you describe a gentleman. Now, you guys can read from author, developer, award-winning business owner. Let me just make sure I give him the proper accolades. This man went from package delivery driver in northern Idaho, if you will, and that's where he began his career at UPS. Now, we are dating him a little bit because 1966, but man, is there wisdom in this gentleman. And he went all the way to the president of the UPS International. Now, the part that's really powerful for me is he had the tenure and oversight of over 60,000 employees. That alone is amazing, 220 countries. And yes, he's been the co-chairman or co-chairman of over 33 board of directors. So I would say he has a lot to share. Now, since retirement is when I got to meet him. And that's when I realized the amazing man he was and is. He's trailblazed his way through the last 2 decades. As you guys can see, he's got a company called the CEO #1 Group. He's a law enforcement officer. That's an interesting piece. The part that I love, that you also see at the bottom, this man owns an Irish pub called the Old Blind Dog. I have had the privilege of eating there, and that's where I eventually met him over time. I met him first and then said, I got to go to your restaurant, which, by the way, is literally in walking distance from my home. But it was the best Irish pub in the world. So if you ever come to Atlanta, you want to look up Old Blind Dog. So with that, let me just welcome everybody. Do not forget, you want to stay to the end because I have something that you may want, and it is an autographed book. But it's going to be for the end, everybody who makes it to the end, which, by the way, will make this so engaging, you'll want to stay with us. But amazing book. So I'll be talking to him about some of the wisdom he in here and in his other books. But for that, let me welcome Mr. Ron Wallace. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so you guys can actually see us in on big screen. So Ron, you want to join us, my dear? And I am going to make sure all right, there you are, Ron. How are you today?
I'm doing good, Casey, and I'll be your fox.
You are a fox. You just didn't know that. You're a fan of XINNIX. You just didn't know it. Oh my gosh, Ron. Let's just have just a wonderful time together. I know you and I talk off camera a lot, and we have some opposing viewpoints and some concurring viewpoints. Today, I really want to bring just value to our clients and to those that are getting to know us. But, you know, my life legacy, I hope, is that I help to connect people to success, that I help them achieve the American dream or whatever dream they have for themselves. So, all right, you ready to jump into questions?
Absolutely.
All right, by the way, you've got your shirt on for your Old Irish Pub, Old Blind Dog.
That's part of the uniform.
Part of the uniform. All right, you ready? In your book, you know what, you made it a point, and I think everybody will appreciate this, to always remember where you come from. And I'd just love to hear a little bit more about you and where you came from.
Okay, as you mentioned, I grew up in North Idaho. Had a challenging childhood. My mother went to work at a hospital. She's a registered nurse. My father left us when I was about 8 years old. She got put on nights, so I virtually lived alone. Could probably make a movie out of that time. We weren't in poverty, but we weren't far from it. And even at a young age, I worked odd jobs. In the summer, when I was about 12 years old, I worked in Washington State on a farm. And of course, farm work is extremely hard. And it's sun up to sundown. And I got to know a lot of people. We didn't make a lot of money, but I learned a lot of lessons. And being around those kind of people, you could see the pride and the hard work they did. So I learned a lot there. And then fast forward, it was time to get married. And prior to that, I'd put an application in for UPS months ago, did a live interview, and kind of forgot about it. So we're getting ready to get married on a Saturday. And my wife had a job. I didn't. I just got laid off. So we're going into this marriage virtually with no job and no money. The night before the wedding, and I swear this is divine intervention, I get a call from UPS and said, we're going to hire you and you're going to start Monday. So my honeymoon was one day. Um, with that, I was a delivery driver for UPS in Idaho for about 5 years. So I learned the job from the inside. After 5 years, I was promoted to supervisor in operations in Seattle, Washington. The journey began from there. I've moved about a dozen times. I've lived outside the United States for over 10 years. And even those early lessons, and as hard as it was, I wouldn't want to do it again. But just at the same time, it always keeps me appreciating where I came from.
So your wife, how blessed is she? You had a one-day honeymoon, but she now married a man with a job.
Yes.
So she must really love you because she was committing to marrying you without one. So listen, the time we've had together, I mean, you have so many stories. And by the way, one of the best storytellers I've ever heard. I literally could sit for hours. All of you listening in, you're about to hear some amazing stories. And every time I hear you, I go, gosh, you have been on the trail. You've been a lot of places. You've seen a lot of people and met a lot of great people. So can you pick a favorite? Like if you could go back to a moment in time, what would that be?
It really is hard to pick a favorite, but if I had to pick one, it would probably be Yamato's son, which means Mr. Yamato. He owns the largest transportation company in Japan, very well known throughout Asia. He was our UPS partner in Japan, and he and I became very good friends. And when I was in Japan, we spent hours and hours together. And he wanted to know about the culture of UPS and Americans. And of course, he taught me the culture of Japan and Asians and those kind of things, to the point, if I had a situation, or sometimes he had a situation, we talk by phone and just say, this is happening, what do you think? He was a mentor that I'll never forget. When my father died, he actually is one of the few people, I don't know how he knew it, sent flowers and called me. He was just a wonderful person.
Is there something specific that resonated with you that he taught you that was critical? Was it about relationships?
It was, and I think in general, just talking about Asia in general, we have challenges throughout the world. And in Asia, going back to their families, they have a special dedication to their job, a certain respect. And in general, in most of Asia, is our lowest absenteeism, our highest performance, dedication to the job. And that's really a culture in Japan and in most of Asia.
So who's impacted you the most in your life? Like, who would you say your hero is?
That's equally as hard to name somebody. I would have to say that probably Jim Kelly. And Jim was the former CEO. And Jim is the one who promoted me and put me on the management committee. And I'll never forget a conversation when Jim actually promoted me. He brought me into his office and said, you probably know more about the international operations than anyone else we have. And he also said, sometimes you're not quite in step with everybody else, but that's okay. And then he did something that UPS has probably never done. He said, I'm going to turn you loose, go do what you need to do, don't break the law, follow policy, and we're going to keep corporate pretty much out of your way. You report to me, you and I'll work together, but go do what you need to do. And that's kind of an open book for anybody. So I brought the 4 region managers together, and I kind of repeated what Jim had told me. And I said, this is not going to be a wish list, but we're going to go out and we're going to get the low-hanging fruit, and we're going to do exactly what you know we need to do. You're going to run your own operations. I want you to immediately get your managers together and do what you need to do. And simple math says you get the right revenue and you lower costs. And so we started out, I said, I'd like to have this done in 6 months, understanding international been in business for years, and we were losing a lot of money. And you can put a B in front of it. So anyway, they went out and did the obvious. We took a lot of flights down that we didn't need. We raised the rates on a lot of our products that validated what they should have been. And in 10 months, for the first time, International made a profit. Not me, the team, the managers.
So when he appointed you, were you feeling worthy, feeling scared, nervous? I mean, at that level, do you feel like confident, like I got this? Or were you, tell me your state of mind to be pulled in and said, we're going to allow you to do this with virtually no instructions, like go get it done.
I was a little surprised, very thankful, obvious. Prior to that, I have to go back. Herman Cain is one of my closest friends, and his sayings was 999. And the international people, we got tagged, I guess myself, with 10, 10, 10. And at one time I was assigned to Germany, and I was losing a lot of money. And in 10 months, my team, not me, my team turned to profitable. I was then assigned to Canada, had been in business for 20 years. We right-sized the company. We did a lot of work. I met with the Teamsters and told them the situation. I was sent here to either downsize it, fix it, or shut it down. And so we went into negotiations and signed a 3-year contract with the understanding that if we were able to make a profit, we'd come back and work things out. So again, in 10 months, for the first time in 20 years, my team, not me, turned Canada profitable. So I think that helped me get to the position, a meeting with Jim. And when he gave me the latitude to work with the managers and firstly go out in the world and do what I needed to do, what we needed to do, it worked. And I think a lot of the culture, a lot of the leadership lessons is that, if you can trust your people, train them, support them, but then get out of their way. Don't micromanage. Turn them loose. We're going to make mistakes, and we did make a lot of mistakes, but it was so worth it because in 10 months, for the first time, International became profitable. And the second part of your question is who's my heroes? My heroes wear brown uniforms and police uniforms.
Brown uniforms and police, just so all of you know, I almost wore brown for you today, but it's not my color. Just an FYI. Anyway, I almost thought of wearing brown just in honor of you. I'm dying to hear about your business ventures, but before we go into that, you just mentioned the word culture, and the subtitle to your book is Delivering a Culture of We, Not Me. Can you talk a little bit about the culture at UPS and what's different about when you started versus the day you retired? Because you were there for quite some time.
Yeah, really, there's not a lot of changes since the day I started and the day I retired. Most of the culture at UPS policies were made in when the company started with Jim Casey in 1907 and the other founders over the years. They had a vision, they had a philosophy, and how the company should be run. And obviously, over the years, there's been enhancements to keeping policies and culture changes up in the modern world. But basically, it's back to the same value-based culture that was established in the early 1900s. And that was built on discipline, accountability, respect. And then Jim did a lot of things that still practiced today. And even in the policy book, he wrote that UPS people are always to be addressed by their first name. We don't believe in titles. We're a very informal company. And Jim and our culture makes everybody equal. And there's a view that the porter, the car washer, the clerk is just as important as any of the executives, including the CEO. And obviously, important relationships is the number one thing that drives us. There's a lot of companies, including UPS, that does a lot of things, but if you look at it, it's really a people company, and that's really what it's about. And we have a promotion from within policy. When we hire people, we don't hire them for a job. We vet them very well. We hire them for a career. And once they get into UPS, there's so many opportunities. We cross-train. We offer opportunities and promotions. And those that take it really pass the culture on seamlessly because they've been cross-trained. They understand it just like I did. And then Jim also introduced, and it's still practiced today, that we offer our managers stock in the company based on the responsibility and results. So they really have skin in the game. And we have a saying, it's owned by the managers and managed by the owners. So a lot of things build a lot of different cultures, but that's kind of the key points on it.
You know, it's interesting because, you know, I'm real intentional about the culture at XINNIX and, of course, making sure we example what we preach. I recently had the privilege, and I don't even know if I told you this, of speaking to some people with UPS, and just the warmth and the pride. When I said, how long have you been there? And one of them said 25 years, but I'm a youngster here. And I went, wow, to realize that kind of tenure and that kind of passion. Anyway, it was real obvious to me on the phone, and it was a privilege to talk to them. So you keep mentioning, or in the book, and you mentioned it again just now, the founder of UPS, Jim Casey. One of the most interesting stories, which I thought was interesting to me, is the day Jim Casey actually made an unexpected visit in Seattle. Can you sort of share about that? Because that speaks to the culture and anybody listening in who is trying to drive a powerful one.
Yeah, absolutely. As Jim preaches, and as I mentioned, everything's on a first name basis. It's very informal. Jim talks to the people in such a way that makes you feel like you are part of the family. So anyway, I was in our Seattle operations, and I had a car with a dead battery, and I was hooking up battery cables to it. And I don't think anybody in the world knew that Jim was even in the Washington area. And all of a sudden I turned around, and here stands Jim Casey himself, a legend, the founder of the company. And of course, it flashes through my mind about all the things that I've read in policy books and what I've been taught and trained on in culture. And
now, how old are you at this time when you're like meeting him for the first time?
Yeah, it was like God standing there.
So how old were you, Ron? Were you young, or was this midway in your career?
It was starting out in supervision in Seattle, so it was really early in my career. And I'd actually met Jim one time before at a gathering, and kind of just a handshake type thing. So anyway, when I turned around and seen him, he comes up to me and he says, "Hello, my name is Jim. What's your name?" Right out of the policy book. So we shook hands, and he says, what's going on here? I said, I got a car with a dead battery. Jim took his suit coat off and said, let me help you. He didn't do the easy part. He grabbed the cables, got his hands dirty, hooked it up the battery, and says, you go try to start the car, which we did. So after that, he says, I don't want to bother you, but do you have time to talk to me for a few minutes? Kind of hard to say no to the founder. So we sit down, and Jim had a way in a matter of seconds to make me feel like I was his best friend. And all of a sudden, it was almost like I was his mentor, opposed to the other way around. And he says, tell me about what you do, what goes on this building, how can we make the company better, on all those kind of things. We probably talked for a good 20 minutes. And that was really the best engagement probably I've ever had in my life.
Wow, anybody listening in right now, why don't you send me some information about, does that happen to you in your company, or would that be a surprise as well? Because you're right, the size of UPS, and he walks over and helps you roll up his sleeves, speaks volumes that there are no levels. He actually lived what he wanted in that culture, it seems like.
Yeah, and that continues on even today. And whether you're on the management committee or almost any level, we're out where the action is. And I think that's probably one of the most important things in the world is get out of the offices. Nobody's going to steal your furniture, and get out where the action is. A UPS is called MBA, managed by walking around. And we go out and talk to people. And one of my favorite things to do is visit the operations and make cold calls. When it's planned, you know that they're ready for it. You can smell fresh paint in the building. And management has a way to kind of buffer and make things sound a little better than it might be. So you talk to the car washers, you talk to the porters, you talk to the clerks, you talk to the part-timers. That's where you get the real picture and the real vision of what's going on in those operations. And people appreciate it. And as I mentioned, it's a first name basis when a CEO or president or executive committee or almost any level goes out and talks to people. It's on a first name basis. And we ask the right questions. And at UPS, very few inventions, if you will, are done in an engineering office. It's tuned up there and all that kind of stuff. But for an example, the people working the job all day and all night, touching it in and out, 8-10 hours a day, who knows that job best and who knows the equipment best? For an example, we went for years without shelves in a package car. And it was kind of almost a no-brainer. And a driver actually suggested that. We tested it. Now, of course, there's shelves in every car in the world. Sure. And a porter, I remember in the Seattle building, told me about some shut-off systems. And this is a porter who cleans the buildings that walked around and said, "You ever thought about doing this?" And that's exactly what you want. And you listen to people, and in most cases, react to them, get back to them, and most everything, at least in the other companies I've worked at, exactly the same thing. I can go around the world and the culture and the different things that our drivers and other people say, "Let's try that. Have you ever thought about this?" And the light bulb goes off. No, we really haven't. Let's see what happens.
Okay, I have to ask you for a moment. Did that moment when you met Jim Casey inspire you to want to become the president? Was that even in your mind?
I think UPS culture and management, everybody does the best they can to perform, work as hard as they need to, put the hours in. And UPS is not an easy job. And you have dedicated people, and we believe in doing all the small things well, and you get the results. And the motivation for most people is a drive to advance in the company.
So you wanted to become the president after that, or you thought about it?
I didn't have visions to be a president. I had visions from a supervisor to keep my job and go to a management position. I was far from those kind of dreams at that moment.
Wow. Well, that has obviously a moment in time, and what a great lesson for everybody listening in. Okay, so one of my favorite quotes in your book, is that building a high performance team using simple principles with a basic structure that everyone can easily understand. If you had to choose a couple of things, what are a couple of things you see as the most important regarding leadership and communicating the CEO's vision?
Again, I'll go back to it. It's a people company. And I'll just use my restaurant for an example. And when I talk to our people there, I normally say there's a restaurant on every corner. They got great atmosphere, some of them. Some of them have food better than us. And it's always about the people. And being a people company at UPS, that's what we lived and died on. And I think building a strong team will matter more than anything else you can do. And it's certainly not a secret, but most successful leaders know success is bigger than them. And they surround themselves with people that has skills and talents that they may lack. On the communication question, I think I put this in the book. Some time ago, there was a survey, and they surveyed 50,000 CEOs. And the question was, do you believe that your vision is clearly communicated and executed to your employees? 95% said yes. Then they surveyed 50,000 employees in those same companies, and the answer came back much different. 20% said no. So I think that connection from the front offices to the employees is so critical. And again, that's where you have to get out in the action and talk to people. Because I think sometimes, including myself and others, are guilty of spending too much time in meetings, too much time in offices, and they should be where the action is. And then you have to ask the questions. And I think it's easy, we're all guilty of it, that we have too many meetings. I used to call meetings when we needed to have meetings. Didn't need that regular Monday meeting. People are probably cringing right now, but You kind of lose a lot of stuff in meetings and productivities. And what I found is you have a meeting, which causes another meeting and another meeting, and all of a sudden the people in the room are going back, talking to their staff, and they're building more slides, more glass ceilings, more reports, more research, getting ready for the next meeting. So what they're doing is running meetings opposed to running a company.
Woo, everybody listening in. How many of you are excited? Maybe your boss will get you out of some meetings if they're listening in right now. So by the way, Anna, I saw your question. I'll come back to it. So I promise you I'm going to get to it. Anybody else who have questions for Ron, feel free to put them into the question area and I'll try to get to it. Okay, so let me ask you another. In your book, you talk about just before retiring that you visited an operation in the Philippines. After that visit, you could have written the book, you said, on a postcard. Can you tell us about that visit?
Yeah, absolutely. Just before I retired, I wanted to go back to the Philippines. I was part of developing Clark Air Force Base, which we did a lot of work on. We put a air recovery system on Clark Air Force Base. We had about 100 employees there. And for years, the Philippine operation was the best, and I mean by far the best in every single element that UPS measures, and we measure everything. And so the region manager, Charlie Adams, and I went in the building about 11 o'clock at night. And when you walk in the building, it was just, it was almost like a party-like atmosphere. People were happy, they were talking, and that's what you want to see in a building like that. We almost had no turnover. In every measurable elements, they were the best in the world and had been for years. So Eddie was the manager, and we walked around the belt, and he introduced me to every single employee by first name, and he knew something about them. How's the new baby? Did your dog have pups? Just, I mean, how would he know all this stuff? And then after that, we went in the office, and Eddie's very, very modest. And I said, Eddie, just tell me what you do. I mean, you are the best in the world at things. How do you do that? What's your magic formula? And of course, we all know there's a lot of things. There's a lot of things that you do, but in all the modesty in the world, with a slight smile, Eddie said he does 4 basic things. He said, I believe in God. I believe in the company. I believe in myself. And I believe in my employees, who just happen to be my best friend. And I thought, that is the essence of leadership, and what works, works. And that's why I say the book could be written on a postcard.
Wow. I believe in God, I believe in the company, I believe in me, and I believe in my team, my employees. And he took the time to get to know each and every one of them. So there's a couple of questions that are coming in, so I'm going to jump into some questions if you don't mind, and I'll come back. Anna would like to know, could you expand on how you train your team with expectations to empower them with autonomy and growth? By the way, she said, thanks, from a North Idaho girl raised in Naples, Indiana.
Oh, I know Naples.
Naples, Idaho.
I used to race close to there.
So how do you train the team?
Yeah, and we are so, we give people responsibility. We train them, we teach them, and we cross-train them. We want everybody to know as many parts about the company as they can. It's important to know what the mechanics does. It's important to know what engineering does. It's important to know what HR does. So we try to rotate people. Then when they get a certain responsibility and certain results, and they've proven themselves, it's time to turn them loose. So with a good succession plan, we move them through the ranks. We give them a certain operation, see how they do, and then keep moving and moving them. And we allow people to follow, obviously, the policies, the cultures, and processes and procedures, because they're trained on that. It's just in their blood. And then we want people to really go out and manage on their own, without babysitting them, without looking over their shoulder, without being a mother hen, and turn them loose and trust them. They're going to make mistakes. It's okay. There's a lot of mentors around. There's a lot of people that can help them. But the main thing, I think some people really overpower their people, and they have so many rules, so many regulations, and people are under a microscope way too much. And you just need to trust people and turn them loose. And that's the philosophy within UPS. That's the philosophy I have in other companies I own or work with. And in simple terms, trust your people, train them, cross-train them, and let them go do their job.
It's really interesting. You just said, obviously, I have a training company, and and I hear you say, trust them, train them, cross-train them, and trust them again. Let them fail forward. I always say, if you're going to fail forward. You made a mistake, move on, learn from it, grow from it, and move on. But when you hear the word, my husband recently brought you like this little statement. I hope I get it right. You can't lean on the shovel and dig a hole. You have to actually pick it up. And quite often, companies put people in jobs with no training or minimal training and hope that they succeed. And so, was the training very regimented within UPS? Is your philosophy like make sure you give them exact instructions on what you expect, or just the framework?
Right down to every detail. We measure everything. We teach everything. I'll just go back for a couple of things. When you're a driver, there's a way to do every single thing, whether it's picking up a package, whether it's delivering a package, how you stop a car, when you take the keys out, which finger the key ring goes on, all the safety features, how many steps you take, and we have a rule, no backing, and I mean, every detail. I don't know if I could even name a number, but a good trained driver, for an example, or almost anybody in a company, will probably go through a list and have to do it perfect, a list of 40 or 50 things. And that makes the job easier, more efficient, and much safer.
So a lot of questions are coming in, so I'm trying to keep up with you guys. How do you, okay, ready? Here comes from Anthony. Anthony would like to know, how do you keep a team motivated and focused during challenging times in an industry that they work in?
You have to recognize them. You have to make the job interesting. You have to make the job, as you mentioned earlier, fun. And I think even in culture, and I'm not being critical, but I think too often there's a color of the month. There's too many memos out, too many instructions, and people want to have fun on the job, and they want to be challenged. They want to have that respect, and they want, to a degree, a certain amount of discipline. People expect accountability, and that all comes into play to make that job fun, interesting, challenging, and successful. And then recognize them for it in public, in private. Celebration is a great thing, and I don't think it happens often enough.
So I could not agree more about the recognition, because you get what you recognize. And so I'm all about recognize the wins, recognize what they did, yes, but recognize who they're being. So if they're doing a certain task and they're doing it exceptionally well, great job on the job, but say great job in the diligence of getting it done. And then they go, okay, they see me in a different manner. So the being word is really powerful for us in our learning. So
and I think to add to that, sometimes leadership kind of takes things for granted and thinks they're doing a good job, but people can make or break you. I think all of us know that. And the people out there are your eyes or ears or your legs, and in UPS, our drivers are the ambassadors. The public doesn't recognize a corporate office or a building or all the things that go behind the scenes. It's important, but the driver is the ambassador for UPS. And when you see how they dress, how they act, and most of our drivers are customers' really good friends, and the customers depend on them. And sometimes I think we have a tendency to throw too much out there. And the color of the month and banners on the wall and policies and charters and stuff in books and written and rewritten and overdone, and I think that's back to kind of keeping things simple, understandable, and able to communicate it. and then let the employees engage the employees, get their ideas, involve them. And at UPS, we have a pre-work communications meeting, like probably most companies have, 3 minutes. And we talk about, we want to keep them up to date on the company. We tell them what happened yesterday. We tell them what's expected today. We talk about any significant company news. And then we end it with a safety tip. And if there's time allowed, questions. So
Wait a minute,
that,
you do that in 3 minutes?
communication engagement is just, in my viewpoint, just absolutely critical.
Did you say you do that in 3 minutes?
It's a 3-minute pre-work communication meeting.
It's called, what
Every
did I
day-
use yesterday?
Every day it gives us a chance to kind of check appearance and, you know, those kind of things as well. And then we have other meetings with our people, but every day, every operation, day and night, there's a 3-minute pre-work communication meeting just to get people around, see their supervisor, listen to what's going on in the company, be engaged in it. So, you know, your people just can't go out there and live in a void and hear something in the news or in a rumor mill. And of course, that gets torn out of shape and all that kind of stuff. So face to face, tell them the truth, tell them what's going on.
All right, so everybody, somebody asked if I could say it again. I'm going to see if I say it again to make sure I'm right on this. Every day, it's 3-minute stand-up / I'm calling it a stand-up. You had a word for it, but what did we do yesterday? What's expected today? Company news and safety tip. Is that right?
Yes. You got it.
Wow. How many, by the way, I've got a really big question. I'm going to get to it, Shelton, because I think it's a great question that you have. But something you said, if you don't mind, let me expand on that. You mentioned the word give them accountability, like the word expect. Can you expand on why and what the message it sends to others when you say, I'm going to give you accountability? I mean, most people are like, I'm going to hold you accountable. But is there a philosophy to give people this? I mean, like where now I own it?
I think give is probably the wrong word. Hold them accountable and hold yourself accountable. And as I mentioned before, we measure everything, whether it's service, safety, claims, attendance, and it goes on and on. It goes on almost forever. And as I mentioned, people want to be held accountable. They want to know how they're doing. And it's certainly beyond common sense that when you hire somebody, you train them, you give them a good wage, good benefits, you expect them to perform and do a certain job and do that job the right way. And if they don't, then you need to cross-train them or take other actions, including termination. If they're not working out, the chemistry isn't mixing, they're not working within your company, or they have that special attitude, which comes up occasionally.
That's special
accountability. It's like keeping score. It's like having a basketball game and you don't keep score.
Right. Well, I like where you said, I expect them to perform. So we have a question. This is a very big one. I know everybody that's listening, there's some industries out there that are really, really struggling and it's tighter than ever. Business is way down. And the question is, are you ready? So they're in a recruiting war, this industry. They would like to know, now, this is not a UPS commercial, everybody, but he was the former president of UPS International, so it's hard for him not to put it in context. That's where so much wisdom, because they're obviously a very successful company. But the question is how would you convince, are you ready, a regular FedEx user to switch to UPS?
I was in a debate in Hong Kong with the president of FedEx. And he went on and on about FedEx. My statement was, you know, FedEx really, I'm going to have everybody cringing on this one, but
Nobody's listening.
FedEx really is a good company. And the reason is they copy almost everything that UPS does. And they could go deeper, but I'd probably end up in a lawsuit here. So, you know, recruiting today, I don't know where all the people are. We have the same challenge in the other companies I work with and some of the boards I'm on, and even in our own restaurant, you know, where do all the people go? And, you know, working at home, we did that a little bit. I've done it on a medical company I owned. Doesn't seem to work, but I'm not sure if I have the answer. you can outpay people from your competitors and the other industries, and but everybody's trying to find people. And in some companies, the smaller companies especially, you just can't afford to operate that way and compete against the big chains who can sustain. And I think the best reference is probably people that works for your company and talks to their friends and relatives and other people and tells them what a great company it is. Because if you get them in the door and you do have a good solid company and you do have opportunity and benefits and all that kind of stuff, then you can certainly introduce that and talk about it. And but it's so hard to get people, especially today. And as you know, Casey, I'm out of politics, so I'll just leave it at that and not mention why I really think we don't have people coming in the door.
Sure. So tell me that, right, we're going to stay away from politics today. We promised each other, sort of, offline. All right. I got another question coming in from Corey. Hey, Corey, it's good to see you on here. With so many people working from home all over the country, how do you get them to embrace your culture?
It depends on what they're doing from home and that culture. I think, at least in the companies I've been involved in, you can't work from home. You can't deliver packages from home. You can't sort packages from home. You can't unload airplanes from home. So it's a little bit different. I guess there's some administrative work that it works. It kind of bothers me. When I had a medical company, we had Zoom calls too often, but it's still disruptive. And we're trying to do business. We're trying to do all the things that a normal company would do, but all of a sudden somebody's got to go answer a door, take care of the crying kid, the dog jumps in their lap, all those things. It's disruptive. Does it ruin everything? Probably not. Is it a way of life now that I guess in some companies it works if you can do it that way? But at least at UPS, you need people at work.
So a good question. When I think, by the way I've done it and I've approached it, so I'll add to your answer on how do you build a culture remotely. I think it's over communicate. Never assume. One of the things that I recommend for anybody, I'm gonna get your thoughts on this, is as you said, you got to expect them to perform, but you also said at the very beginning, which I think is the fundamental core of who UPS is and why their culture is so powerful, was it's about people. And so on these Zoom calls, quite often we have the Zoom call for a reason. Why not just have a Zoom call just to catch up, see how you're doing? Because if they're remote and all you're in is business meetings, constantly solving problems, you're not having the water cooler or the drive time or the warehouse time, etc. Is to be more intentional. That at the very beginning, I had an amazing call today. You'd have loved it, Ron, one of the most brilliant speakers in the country. And he and I were chatting and he said, you just start with a values meeting. How are you doing? How's it going with your family? And not forgetting that the people are the fundamentally, that's who the culture is. So making sure you spend that time, even on camera, if you can't get to them fast enough because there's so many.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I'll use just a quick example. When we had the medical company, one of our partners has a office with a great conference room with all the screens and technology, everything you need, about 20 minutes from my house. And often we would go up there. But then we decide a Zoom call actually works better because the time you take to drive up there and drive home, there's an hour. Plus, when people get together in certain atmospheres, the war stories start. You got to talk about the boat and all that other stuff. And all of a sudden you wasted a good share of the meeting. So at least on Zoom, you can come right to the point and talk about the things you need to talk about, then turn it off.
Right. So Ron, right now, tell me about the business ventures that you're in, because since retirement, by the way, retirement's not the right word. Since leaving UPS, because you have definitely not retired. So retirement means you're supposed to not be doing anything. That is not what you're doing. You want to share some of the business ventures you're in and what you're up to?
Believe it or not, I'm actually trying to slow down. I've run over 80 campaigns, and I'm out of the campaign world. I'm helping one of our good friends, Casey, and that's going to be it. I'm still a police officer after 15 years. I own one restaurant, I'm a partner in a commercial development of about a 200,000 square foot a village here in Milton, Georgia. And then over the years, I've written different pieces to books. And so I started bringing all those back together, and I'm about halfway through 2 new books. And so hopefully I can get those things completed, but I'm really trying to slow down, and I'm still on 5 or 6 boards and those kind of things, but I'm trying to slowly learn how to say no.
Okay, well, that's a good segue to a question someone wants to know. So you're writing 2 books, but let me see, who was it that said, can you share, here it is. This is by Joel, or Joe. Joe, Ron, are you reading books right now? And if yes, or did you read a lot of books? And if yes, what's the best business book you'd recommend for someone to read?
Leadership Lessons from a UPS Driver.
This one?
That could be it.
That could be it. All right, what else?
I've read a lot of books, and the quick story on, and I'm not an author, but I gave quite a few talks at different colleges, UGA, and I was at a Christian school and gave a talk, and down there they convinced me to write a book. And so I thought about it, and I got with John Maxwell's writers and talked to them. They helped me, and other people. And I wrote a book of about 30 pages. And I came home from after I got off work with the law enforcement, and I read it, and I said, that is the dumbest thing I've ever read in my life. And I deleted the whole thing and just threw up the white flag.
You did not.
I did. So probably a year went by, and other people started talking to me and helping me. So anyway, that's we ended up writing the book. And the quick story, well, I'm going to leave that part out. Never mind.
No, leave the story. Put the story in, because I don't want to take away. By the way, if you read the book, the back, all of the at the back, we got Dan Cathy from Chick-fil-A, obviously UPS, Morgan Stanley. I mean, huge people that you've had the privilege of being with over the years. So you got to tell the story.
I have to be careful how I say this, but anyway, Barrett Kohler, one of the biggest publishers of leadership books, is in Oakland, California. And I went down there for the day and talked about a lot of different things. And they wrote a draft, and they called me one day and said, do you want this book to be a bestseller? And I sensed, what is the conditions here? Doesn't feel right. And they said, as long as you've been there and working in the right circles, we'd like for you to talk about, and I want to say clearly that UPS is a clean, honest, high morale, high integrity company. And they were not perfect. And they said, over the years, and they're going back forever, would you talk about things like the strike? Would you talk about some of the things that weren't perfect within the company, and maybe even a little bit of fraternization here and there? And the easy, quick answer was, I would never say anything about my friends at UPS. I would never say one bad word about them. This company made me, and I don't care if we sell 1 book or 10 books. The answer is no. So they wrote the book as is.
Wow. If you want to know the heart and the mind of a man who's literally had amazing success, and you know, Ron, there's so many stories I wish we could get to that you could share. But I'll let you for a moment as we close out in just a minute. We've got about 4 minutes. I want everybody to know, if you answer our survey at the end of today's webinar, now it's going to pop up in just a minute, you get the chance of winning 10. We're going to give away 10 of these books autographed by Ron. And this is your last chance to ask him a question if you like. But if you want a book, you're going to be the first 10 people to answer the survey. Can everybody do me a favor before he closes out? I'm going to ask him one more question. Give him a note of appreciation and thanks, because I had to pay him a lot of money. I'm just kidding. I think it was $1, right, Ron? It was. We're not talking about that dollar, are we? So we made a little bet, by the way, everybody. I lost the bet, and this man made me pay my dollar. But one thing that you've impacted me in my life is that, in first of all, countless things that you've done for me and my family. but really at the heart of it is every person that I know that knows you is like, he's just a good man. I mean, Ron Wallace is a good man. And when I read your book and I looked at it and I was like, it's all about the people. It's about the people, setting the standards. You get what you allow. You have high expectations. You expect people to perform, but you love them along the way. When they make a mistake, they learn from it and grow, and lots of wisdom today. So I'll let you end with your favorite story, if you have one, that you think resonates where, because you've been on a lot of adventures, like just pure adventures. Do you want to share? Because you shared a few with me, but any specific that you would love to share with everybody as we close out today?
Probably a quick story is when I worked in Germany, I had a title. It's called Geschäftsführer. And that is equal to a CEO of General Motors and all that stuff. It wasn't me, but it was on my business card because it had to be. And in Germany, a company cannot own a company. So all 3,000 Mercedes-Benz, Daimler-Benz trucks was under my name. So if you look at the title, the registration, it was under my name. Same with the buildings. So obviously I had great credit. And we went to the International Car Show in Frankfurt. And Daimler-Benz, Mercedes-Benz attended some of my board meetings. I attended some of those. So at that time, I was the largest owner outside the German government of Mercedes-Benz. So we go to this car show, they recognize us, and they take us downstairs where all these very important people are. Kings, a lot of people from Saudi with robes and buttons, diamond buttons that are worth more than my house, not your house, Casey, but my house. And so the CEO of Daimler-Benz introduces me. And I mean, these guys in the room, they own castles, multiple castles, and all kinds of stuff. And he says, this is the biggest owner of Mercedes-Benz in the world. And these guys with their diamond rings are now kissing my ring. And it was just unbelievable. And it was one of those things that my mother could only see me now. And little old truck driver from North Idaho in here with all these important people. I was the least important person by far, but that's probably one of my favorite stories.
Well, Ron, when I first met you, I got a phone call, after I got to, and you came over to the house, and then you invited me to your beautiful home, and that was a privilege. It was a privilege, just so you know, for that moment of time that I got to see sort of the inside of your home, how personal and how beautiful it is, but how welcoming you are. And I appreciate the way you welcome my children to say, certainly bring your kids. I want to let them see. I won't tell all the secrets about your gorgeous home, but I will say that my children still talk about it. And they think you are the coolest guy. And they're like, Mom, he is awesome. Can we go back? So just so you know, they're ready to have a party in your house. And so in the sunken bar, possibly. So they're not old enough yet. But I want to say thank you for your time today and for our friendship. And for anyone listening in, you don't always get the wisdom from these giants, and I'm going to call you the giants, that have literally grown your career at an amazing organization. And you've given me a new respect for UPS today. And so you have represented them well. I will tell you that. And so for everyone listening in, I hope you took away some nuggets and some things that you want to put into your business or things you want to be. But I'd say dream. Anything's possible, but you have to believe in yourself. And I love, Ron, that you always believed in yourself at the beginning. Obviously, since you only had a one-day honeymoon. Did you ever give your wife, by the way, a longer honeymoon after you made it?
No, we worked the rest of our life.
I'm going to talk to Kate about that and say he owes you a honeymoon. How many years married now?
Oh, man, 50.
50, yeah, you're about to get in trouble. You couldn't remember us. So, all right. Everybody
actually, I did take her on a honeymoon.
You did?
From Idaho. We stayed in the finest hotels in Las Vegas. The rest of the story, we slept in the car and used the hotels to clean up. We couldn't afford a hotel room. But we were in Las Vegas in the parking lots of the finest casinos in Las Vegas.
Well, there you go, everybody. We'll end on that. That is a honeymoon for sure. Ron, have a beautiful day. Thank you. You're a blessing to our family and to all of my foxes out there. That's friends of XINNIX, fans of XINNIX. It's great having you. For those of you brand new to us, we hope you enjoyed today's time. Take care, Ron, and thank you, everyone.